So it's great to kick off the meeting formally. My name is Colin Driscoll, and I get the opportunity to kick it off. I love having that little bit of rock and roll music early on. That's great. It's also great to see the bright, shiny faces, well-fed, caffeinated. So we'll kick it off. First of all, I'd just like to thank the scientific committee and all the abstract reviewers for the tremendous amount of work that it takes to put a program together like this, and look at who they are in the program, and pat yourself on the back if you were part of that. If not, pat one of them on the back for the efforts. We have a group of state champions, which has been phenomenally productive, and we owe some gratitude to them and the work they put in throughout the year. Yesterday, we had the opportunity, many of us, to go to the Hill and do some advocacy work. Many of the champions are part of that group. I think we had about 65 people go to the Hill. People had 4 to 6 meetings during the day. It's a pretty hectic event. It's actually the first time I've done that. So it was a good learning experience. I think a lot of the meetings were quite productive. Finally, I'd like to thank Donna Sorkin, who's our executive director, and her staff, the ACIA, for the tireless efforts year-round to make this organization successful. You know, if you rely on us clinicians to keep the things moving forward, it'll never happen, because what we really love to do is take care of people and be in the clinic, and so these other things fall by the wayside. So thank you to Donna and the staff. And I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to participate in this organization. So, do you consider yourself a professional? How would you define professionalism? It's a simple word, but yet it's a complicated word, and there are many books written about it, papers written about what professionalism is. I can't remember all that many things, and one of them boil it down to four words. 4 words I can remember. They're humanism, altruism, accountability, and excellence. Humanism is that connecting with patients through empathy and patience and compassion. Altruism is that selfless concern for the well-being of others. Accountability, at the end of the day, we're responsible for what's going on in our sphere. Nobody else, we are responsible. And then excellence, the lives of the people we serve are too important to be treated with mediocrity. It's our job to be good at what we do, not just good, but excellent at what we do. The next few days are about building ourselves in that excellence domain, listening to people, learning from people, sharing what you know so other people can learn and become better professionals. And I think a true professional will leave this conference better equipped to care for the patients and families and others with hearing loss. We have a few special events this year. Friday afternoon, we have the SiriusXM radio show. Sean McMenemy is an NYU neurotologist. He's been doing this show for a number of years now. That's a couple hours. It's usually a live broadcast on SiriusXM. A lot of us have participated. We're going to have the studio here, and we weren't able to do it live, but we'll record it and it'll play it later this weekend. And then the Listening Project premiere, which probably everybody in here has already heard about by now, will take place on Friday evening, and I'd like to welcome everybody to come to that. I think that'll be an exciting and different event. So with that, we're going to play the trailer, and then Donna will introduce one of our special guests for this morning. So go ahead and cue up that trailer.
All right, I'm speeding.
I'm speeding.
I'm Zachary Zaremba. I'm 24. I don't even know the exact kind of hearing loss I have, but most of it's gone.
I don't wake up every morning and think, oh, I'm deaf.
I remember having a box on my chest.
It was about this big. There was no way around it. I was different.
I used to act as though if it were a radio, even though there was no music coming in.
I just always remember being this way.
I tried so hard to be quote-unquote normal. I just didn't want people to know I had a hearing loss.
I'm not the way I am just because I grew up this way and I speak the way I do. It took a lot of work.
I had to make sure that I met with every single teacher. It's almost like I went to class twice.
When you're out and you're with a group of people you've never met before, that's intimidating.
I had trouble finding a job. Every once in a while I would get the question, how are you on the phone? And the risk is you're going to be able to keep up.
You don't know what you missed. You missed stuff and you have no idea that it ever happened.
Oh no, my battery's dying. I always have a spare battery packed in my wallet.
People hear that I'm deaf. Their instincts automatically take them to this place where deaf doesn't exist anymore.
when I take it off, my deaf disability comes out. My voice becomes more monotone. But the second I put it on, my voice goes back to normal.
I could not believe all the things I could hear.
I just started playing some notes to see how it sounded. It's like life's being shot back into you.
You just have to learn to embrace it. I can hear and still take it off and be deaf at the same time.
I think it's kind of peaceful, actually.
We're so lucky that we live now and not 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even 15 years ago.
Essentially what you're doing is allowing for someone to create a life for themselves that is whatever they want.
That's it. And we're back.
Do join us on Friday night. I have the pleasure of introducing our opening speaker today. U.S. Congressman David McKinley is in his third term, representing the 1st District of West Virginia. He's one of 2 congressional members who is a professional engineer, but he's the only member of Congress who has a cochlear implant. The congressman is a proud 7th-generation West Virginian and the founder of McKinley & Associates, an architectural and engineering firm that he ran for 44 years before being elected to Congress. He serves on the Committee on Energy and Commerce, addressing energy, environmental regulation, and health care. Mr. McKinley is the co-chair of the bipartisan Congressional Hearing Health Caucus, which has advocated for passage of hearing-related legislation, such as the Early Intervention Act. He has taken an especially active role and interest in issues affecting access in hearing technology, including cochlear implants. He argued for continued coverage of auditory osseointegrated devices when CMS threatened to remove Medicare coverage, a position that helped maintain coverage. We have been inspired to hear him say that a cochlear implant made it possible for him to serve in Congress, and we're grateful for his work to advance access to cochlear implants and other hearing technologies.
All right, how about the back row? Can you hear me all right? All right, I have a tendency to ask that question a lot because for those of us that are impaired, I know somewhat what it's like not to be able to hear, and I want to make sure we hear. I want to understand who drank all the coffee out there. I came here for a coffee to get started with, and I've got to have that to begin with, and I get told it's all gone. Thank you all for joining us here this morning for this program, and I was absolutely blown away with this little film clip that you just showed. It is so true, and I wish we could have something like that. I'd literally like to carry it on my cell phone to show people all across America the lives that we live in the deaf community when we're told different things. Turn your hearing aid up, McKinley, or sit in the front row. I could go on with that, but probably one of the funnier things was after I had my cochlear implant, they had to change the setting on it because when your battery was dying, the light started to flash. And I finally, enough people came up to me and they said, "Are you going to explode?" And it was, we just hadn't realized that it was, because I can't see it flash. I have no idea. Why is it flashing? It's it's beeping on me. I know it's dying, but I'm telling everyone around me, back up. I'm going to explode. And then they finally change the setting on it. So those of you that are in the business, don't allow your client to walk out with that thing beeping on you, signaling out there. That's not a good sign with it. But I want to open up just a little bit with a little bit of levity here this morning, since you didn't give me coffee. The one thing when I came to Washington, and now it wasn't just 3 terms ago, it was 4 terms. Now I'm in my 8th year. That I saw a lot of people change when they come to Washington for whatever reason. Maybe it's the water. So as a result, my wife and I, Mary, we bring our water to Washington because we want to make sure that it's not the water that we're drinking that maybe has an effect on us. But I'll tell you, one thing that she does is I think is very important for me and for many of us is try to keep our egos in check. Because you come here, you're one of 435. There are only something like 15,000 Americans ever served in Congress. So it can be for some people an ego trip. I had the fortune of running an architectural engineering practice. It was one of the largest in the East Coast. So I had already accomplished some things in my life, but coming here, I saw people changing. And so I said one time, coming back to so Mary's job is to kind of keep me in check, make sure my ego doesn't get out of line. So we often have late night votes, and we were walking back, she was here that week, and we were walking back to the Capitol, and if you've ever seen the dome of the Capitol at night, with that lights on it and the dark sky behind it, it's awesome. And I turned to my wife and I said, Mary, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think we'd be here in Washington? She didn't miss a beat. She looked right back at me and said, honey, you're not in my wildest dreams. So that's her job. She's doing her job to make sure that we keep a good sense of balance of what our job is to do here. And one of the things that I've come to learn, so I can get right to it, and that is, as Donna said, I'm the only member that I know of, I think that's correct, I'm the only member that has a cochlear implant on the Hill. And as a result of that, I'd like to think of myself as a poster child of success, of how something like this can change your life and be something that's very important to us. I've had this implant. It was put in 13 and turned on in 14, January of 14 or February of 14. So I've had it 4 years. I can tell you some side stories of how that, when I first turned it on, was all you get is that crackling noise. And I finally adjusted myself and focused on it by taking my hearing aid out of my other ear and made myself learn how to hear. But it has transformed my life. It's changed my life entirely. Because I'd had this hearing on my other, I'm down to probably, I don't know, 10 or 20% hearing on my right ear. But I've had a hearing loss now for over 40 years. 1976 is when I first started wearing a hearing aid. So you can imagine how the transformation in the audiology, how it's changed in implements over the years to be able to do that. So unfortunately, one thing that I try to make sure people are aware, and I talk to a lot of our members of Congress, and I talked to people when I was in the business world about reaching out to find out those that, because any of us in the business, we understand you can look over a crowd and you can find out who can't hear. And what I do is I try to get to them and try to find, have you determined what your problem is? Get to a doctor. And that was one of the things I had over the over-the-counter hearing aid. So we got into a little debate over that because they were trying to skip a step. And I'm fine with the over-the-counter, but make sure that you get to professionals to find out what's causing your loss. And as a result, we got a couple amendments added into that legislation to try to help out on that. So it's something that's very important for people to understand. And I like being that, I guess if you remember those of us, I'd look out here and I don't see too many of you old enough to remember that TV series, The $1 Million Man, Lee Majors. Well, that's kind of how I feel. I'm running around, I got electronic on this year and I got electronic on this. I feel like that bionic man out there to be able to hear, because I hear nothing. At night, when I go to sleep and I take out my hearing aids, I go into that world that they were just talking about. It's very silent. In some ways, I say it's beautiful. But it's also troubling because I don't know, I can't get an alarm. I can't, when I go to a hotel, how am I going to wake up? Because they can call, knock on the door, or they can call me. I'm not going to wake up to that. I have to have special devices to be able to do that. So I don't think the hearing community understands what we go through. So it's your job, a lot of what you're trying to do, to help out with those that, as I said, how we've been told, turn your hearing aid up, sit in the front of the room, pay more attention. Those are insulting remarks. And generally when someone says that, I cross the line, I just go even further to antagonize people, that when they start making fun of folks that you can't hear very well with it. But I've had the chance to counsel, I don't know how many, we've got several in Congress I'm working with right now. I know at the Johns Hopkins and the doc here from Mayo Clinic, that's where I began until my doctor retired. But I've referred now 3 people now on the Hill that they should at least consider getting a cochlear, because it's so much transformed my life. Donna's right, I couldn't serve in Congress. I could see in a few years how gradually that deterioration was going away, because in committee rooms, when they turned and walked away talking to you, or there's someone presenting, you just didn't hear it. How am I supposed to represent the state of West Virginia? How am I supposed to represent the hearing community when I can't hear what's going on with that? And then I had the pushback in the office. Several people would come into my office, numbers of people would come in office in opposition to what I was doing. And being in opposition to being an advocate for cochlear, being an advocate for hearing aid. They wanted me to learn sign language. You've probably heard that. And I just disagree with that. I know I can sign some, but that's not the solution. To be integrated into society is to be able to hear. And we have, with the cochlear, we have the capacity to renew people's lives. We can open up great opportunities. You think about what the impact, if we had had a cochlear capability back years ago, what would have happened with Helen Keller or Thomas Edison or Alexander Graham Bell? Just think if they could have been able to hear better than they ever could. Certainly with Helen Keller, it would have changed her life around. But then you go back historic figures like Beethoven. Think about that. Beethoven writing the 5th Symphony, da-da-da-dum, and he couldn't hear it. Or the 3rd Symphony. What magic, what marvelous things that the imagination for all of us, if that man and others like him, historic figures, would have been able to hear. It's very impressive with it. And so I like to use my bully pulpit as a member of Congress to try to help out where we can be the voice of the hearing impaired. And Donna's already stolen half my speech, but I'm going to repeat it a little bit on this. That as we use it, because I am chairman of the Congressional Hearing Caucus, when we heard back about 4 years ago the CMS was going to block Bajas, I came back, and we were on break. I came back and had a meeting with them in my office, and I said, you either change your position or we're going to have legislation and reverse it ourselves, and we'll do it statutorily. Within 2 weeks, they reversed their position. And in part, it was a personal effect, because my grandson can't hear at all, and he relies on a Baja. So I was able to talk to people in a personal way. This is what you're doing to people if you don't allow them to have a Baja. They changed it, and they did away with it. And then when the VA decided to do away with their auditory implants, and we intervened on that one as well, and we got them to reverse that position. I think they're finding out this Scotch-Irishman, don't walk into my office if we're going to be in opposition, because I'll fight you toe-to-toe on this until we get our things resolved. I'm not going to back down from a good fight on something like it. And then when the CDC wavered on whether to have early hearing detection and intervention, we authorized a program, put even more money into it, because I know that's what we have to be doing. And I think you all out there would agree with me. Those are the kinds of initiatives, kinds of reinforcement we have to have, and I love being that spokesman to be able to push that back. And then when we heard Donna was telling us about how the VAs are not doing cochlears in a proportionate level to the rest of the public, we've now crafted letters, and they're asking for a meeting with it. I don't think they understand what they're going to do when they walk in, or I come walking in on them. because I think we're going to see a change in their attitude. And if we don't, I'm going to be back on their doorstep again, because a cochlear implant changes people's lives and gives them the opportunity to be everything they can ever have been if they could just have a chance to hear once more again. But we got a lot of work to do. I know that, and all of you know that. So what I'd like to leave you with this is, you have an advocate. You got me as an advocate on the Hill. I'm not shy about making my position known and speaking out on it. I can talk to you about from a very personal standpoint of how this is, and I want to continue working with you and in behalf of the hearing impaired, and particularly those for cochlear implants. And it made my life better, and I think how many more lives you all out there can be affecting other people. So I thank you very much for what you do for the hearing loss community. I thank you for the manufacturers for continuing to develop it. I'm trying to get more money into NIH so that we can have even more research with it. I've been up there to have the conversation. I've led the letter. The increased funding for NIH, particularly on hearing. We've now got $36 billion we're spending in research grants now. When I came to Congress, we were below 30. It's one that I think as a Republican, as a responsible individual, we need to put more money into research, and I want to see a lot more focus into healthcare research, especially on hearing losses, because I understand what that could do for all of our lives. So I thank you for the attention you've given me, and I thank you for giving me the technology for me to be able to serve and represent the state of West Virginia, and God bless this country, and God bless West Virginia. Thank you very much.